morning.
Welcome to our economic program, L'Écho du Mercredi. Thank you very much for letting me to come in the American campus in Eben. So first question, who is Whitney Johnson?
That is such a good question. Who am I? There's so many different ways I could answer that, but I think you're asking me from a professional standpoint, who am I?
Maybe personal, who you are.
Exactly.
Because the first time you are Mauritius, so we don't know you.
Right, you don't know anything about me.
Yeah.
Well, I am originally from the United States. I am a writer and a thinker, and I guess we all think, and an investor, a speaker and advisor on the topic of personal disruption.
When you were a kid, it wasn't in your line, but you become this type, or
not at all. Not at all. So as a child, actually, I grew up in California, so on the west coast of the United States. And I was a very typical middle-class kid where I played dodgeball and I studied piano. And actually in junior high and high school, I thought I would study music, and I was a music major in college and had planned to, I think, had some vague ambition that I would get married and have children, and that sort of is...
And
settle down, yeah.
And one day you come in Mauritius, so far away, you seem to be so far away
I know.
From your country.
Exactly. Why did I come here? Well, I had the opportunity, so I connected with Spalding Jugan Aiklu, that's a hard name for me to say, who's the founder of the American campus through his network and my network, and I was very intrigued about what he's trying to build here, of making it possible for more people to gain an education, which I always think is incredibly valuable. And so he invited me to come here and spend the week and get to know the campus and meet people within your broader community, and so it's a delight for me to be here.
So you started your career, we can say, you were on Wall Street. What were you doing in that crowded world of Wall Street?
Well, I actually, when I graduated from music, my husband, I was married at this time, we moved to New York City, so he could get his PhD. And while he was studying, someone had to put food on the table, and we realized that I was the person who was going to do that because he was in school. And I had to go out and get a job, and because I had studied music in college and I knew absolutely no one in New York, I didn't have very much confidence, and I was a female, I started as an administrative assistant to a retail stockbroker. But once I got there, I realized, oh, this is really exciting. Like, I want to do this. And so I just started taking business courses at night, and I had a boss who believed in me, so I was able to move up from a secretary to investment banker. And if you've ever seen the movie Working Girl, which is that's kind of what my life was like. I was like, you know, this secretary that eventually was able to work my way up.
Did you thought that you could have been to Broadway with your certificate in
with my music?
Should be at Broadway at that time.
I know. A lot of people ask me that, but it's not what I wanted to do. Isn't that funny that I majored in music? But I think in many ways I majored in music because that's what my parents wanted me to do. And once I was married and on my own, I realized I don't want to do music. I want to do this business Wall Street thing.
Was it easy for women? Because I know for what we see in the film, but
it's not easy for women.
It's a guy's world,
It's a guy's world, yeah. In fact, one thing that really illustrates this for me is that when I first started, I was in the secretarial pool, and then there was this whole bullpen next to me of all guys, and they were cold calling people and saying, you know, you need to buy this stock, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that this is a good deal, and throw down your pom-poms and get in the game. And initially I was super offended because I was a cheerleader in high school, but that's what it was like. It was just, the girls do this and the boys do this, and so for a girl to be able to move up, it was very difficult. It still is difficult, but it's certainly getting easier than it was.
So you like the Wall Street way of life? Since that your husband was still
in school,
studying
yeah,
in school.
it was so. It's a hard life. I mean, I worked all the time, but it was so exciting. It was so exciting to be in this place where you were working really hard and you could feel like you were being successful. And at that point in time, you were able to make a fair amount of money. And it was exciting.
Do you still have this trader fiber with you? And whenever you hear NASDAQ,
Yeah, no,
Dow Jones, Nikkei?
I mean, I feel a kinship to it, and I was actually a very good stock picker. I was good at like, okay, this stock's going to go up or not. I'm better than average. Let's put it that way.
You were in livestock or in futures, in oil?
No, just straight stocks. Straight
Which means,
stocks. Straight stocks. So, for example, the companies that I followed were in Latin America. I covered America Mobile, which is a big cellular company. I covered Televisa, which is a big media company. So I did the stocks of these media and entertainment companies in Latin America.
And suddenly one day you decide to give it up?
Yes, I did.
To leave the guys with the guys?
I did.
Why?
I know.
What is the factor?
Why did I do that? I think whenever you make a big decision like this, there are a lot of factors. One was I had hit, I think, a plateau. I was very well regarded in what I was doing. I wasn't going to make more money in what I was doing, and I felt like I had learned what I needed to learn. And so it was trying to try something new. There wasn't really an opportunity to do that inside of the organization. At the same time, our kids were still pretty young. We had a son that was like 8 years old, a daughter who was 4 years old. I was traveling all the time. I kind of had this entrepreneurial piece of me, and so the confluence of all of those things, I said, okay, I'm going to quit my job and try something new.
Was it easy with your husband to tell him that you are the one putting
food on the table?
Food on the table.
I know.
Was it easy with him, or maybe he had already been PhD, was not?
Yeah, you know what? I think this is one of those, it's a really good question, and in retrospect, we've talked about this a lot. I think he thought it was very ill-advised, like he would not have done it, but he was supportive of me, and when I did it, he was just like, okay. But in retrospect, he said to me, yeah, I probably should have pushed back a little bit. But he's a supportive person.
So you became an entrepreneur, and in
Yes.
what field? You stayed in the broking, or you went far away from it?
Well, initially, I went really far away. So initially, I thought, I'm going to write a children's book, and I did. And I'm going to be an entrepreneur and try to do a television show, a reality show about soccer players in Latin America. And we started a business that was a magazine, and none of those things worked. And I think that often happens. When you're an entrepreneur, you try a lot of things that don't work. But in the interim, I had connected with a professor at the Harvard Business School who is well known for disruptive innovation. He wrote a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, and he was starting an investment fund that would invest in disruptive stocks. Because he had no experience with stocks, I joined him as a co-founder in this investment firm. But it took a while, when I left all of that, it took a while to figure out exactly what I was going to do next.
Whitney Johnson, why did you start a book on children while you were in I don't know, like a chateau? When you're on Wall Street, you are so high in the sky.
Yeah.
You come back to write a book for children. What was the
Why
motivation?
did I write the book for children, which has never been published, by the way.
It's somewhere.
Yeah, I have it, and it's all illustrated. I think that it was a book that was semi-autobiographical. It was also for my daughter, but it was just a story that made meaning of my own personal life. And I think one of the things that happens for people when they hit 40 years old is they tend to do a lot of soul searching, like, who am I and what am I going to be? And I think this story in many ways was me starting to try to figure all of that out.
So that book is in French we call it Jardin Secret, your secret garden. You think that you have transferred it for you to me. If I can explain it to myself.
Please.
So you while writing this book, you have put your story, you have sealed your story, you have put it in a box. Maybe in 10, 20 years time, you're going to publish it. When your kids will be maybe fathers and mothers. So now you're Mauritius talking
that's
about...
beautiful. That's beautiful, by the way.
That's why.
The Secret Garden, that image, I love that.
Okay. So now, Maurice, you're going to talk about disruptive innovation. So what is disruptive? Because just before the interview, you explained to me about
yes, what is disruptive innovation?
Yeah.
Well, disruption or disruptive innovation is a theory or a term that was coined by Clayton Christensen at the Harvard Business School, who I just said I had done work with. And it's a theory or a framework that says a silly little thing eventually upends an industry. For example, Toyota started as a very inferior product at, the Corona, and then it disrupted General Motors with its Cadillac. And then you had Netflix disrupting Blockbuster, Airbnb's trying to disrupt hotels.
And in the local, you can say?
Yes, and locally you've got Air Asia X is trying to disrupt Air Mauritius. So that's the silly little thing that takes over the world. You start at the low end, climb to the top, and then you topple the incumbent. So that's what disruptive innovation is. What I discovered in my research in applying this framework to investing, both to early stage companies and stocks, is that companies don't disrupt, people do. And you can apply this framework to the individual, or what I call personal disruption, where you start at the bottom of the ladder, you climb to the top, and then you jump to the bottom of a new ladder, like the children's game Chutes and Ladders. And when you're willing to disrupt yourself over and over again, according to the theory, your odds of success are 6 times higher, and your revenue opportunity 20 times greater.
Yes, can you speak to me, is it 6 times higher because you have experience? You know how the wheels are connected, you know the interconnection?
That can play into it, but actually it's because when you are disrupting, you're a silly little thing, you're playing where no one else is playing, where no one wants to play or has thought of playing. And so as a consequence, you're playing where there's no competition, either because you created a new market or because the incumbent said, oh, there's no margin in this for me. And when you're willing to take on market risk, to play where other people are not, and you're willing to play to your strengths, what you do uniquely well, then the odds of success actually go up, that you'll be successful.
And 20 times, so
so 6 times is, so you still might fail, but your odds of succeeding go from 6% to 36%. And then what the theory has shown is that the revenue opportunity, when you're willing to, again, start at the low end or create a brand new market, the revenue opportunity around that was 20 times higher than it would have been if you just said, well, I see what that person's doing, I'm going to try to copy them, mimic them. You're not as likely to be successful, and you're not going to make as much money.
You see a very local word, mimic.
Mimic.
This is the base of certain person, but economy, but oh, he's doing well, I'm doing the same thing. Can they succeed when they copycat, when they mimic someone else?
Well, it depends. Of course you can succeed, but whenever you compete or you mimic someone, you have to look at that and decide if you can compete and win. And historically, what has happened is if you come in as the second player, unless you've got a lot more money, your odds that you can compete and win are much lower than if you say, okay, I see what they're doing, I see that there are projections in the marketplace, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find something else that needs to be done that no one else is doing. You're more likely to be successful. But our brains say competitive risk feels less risky. Our brains think it's less risky. So we go after the competitive risk instead of saying, okay, I know that there's no one here, and this feels scary to me because I see no one there. But if I can tell my brain, actually, I'm more likely to be successful, then you're more likely to go after the market risk.
You see that another word is risk. I know that the entrepreneur and investor does not like to take something very big risk. If I follow one of your courses, am I going to make more risks, or to step and think before I put my money, or I go a step further in my project?
It's a different kind of risk, and I would say it's a less risky risk, right? Because if you're taking on competitive risk and you're mimicking, then there's a 6% chance as a business you'll be successful. If you choose not to mimic and to try something that other people are not doing, then there's a 36% chance you'll be successful. There's still risk, right? Because there's still a 64% chance it won't work. But 6 times higher are much better odds. So it's still risky, it's a different kind of risk, and it's less risky than the competitive risk.
So do I need but somebody need to be a bit like risk management?
Yes, we absolutely need to manage our risk. And I think one of the ways that we can manage our risk is continuing on with this idea is every time you start something new, you're going to test this. And I've got 4 questions that I ask myself as I'm trying to think through, okay, does this make sense to keep going or should I cut my losses? So the first question you can ask yourself is, am I playing where other people are not, taking on the market risk? Number 2, am I playing to my strengths? And when I say am I playing to my strengths, not just something I've learned to do well, but things that I do reflexively well. Things that I do so well I actually ignore them. And I need to have me tell you what you do well so that you know what it is. Do I play to those strengths? The third question you want to ask yourself is this hard for me but not debilitating? Meaning it doesn't weaken me. So you look at it and you go, wow, this is really hard. But every day you're at it and you're like, this is fun. This is exciting. I want to do this. If you can say that and you're not getting sick and discouraged, then you keep going. And then the fourth question you ask yourself in order to know if you should keep going is, am I gaining momentum in whatever I'm doing? Is my revenue increasing? The number of visitors is accelerating? Like whatever metric is relevant, do those make sense? And if you can answer yes to those 4 questions, then you're still in that 36% probability. If the questions start to say no, then it may mean it's time for you to jump to something new. Yeah, try to jump to something new, knowing though that everything you learned about your strengths, about risk, about how hard you can work, about metrics can be applied, and that's where the experience comes in. Because when I jump to a curve now, I do it very differently, or jump to try a new learning curve now, I do it very differently than I did when I was 20, because I've got the experience and I'm better at doing that than I was when I was younger.
So can I put the fifth question? Does experience have any correlation or any influence on those 4 questions that I need or that somebody need to ask himself? The element of experience.
It's a fantastic question, and I had not thought of it before. So this is really fun that we're having this conversation of my learning from you. I think that the answer is yes, experience does matter. It can hurt you because you can also have this bias of being more afraid than you would otherwise. But if you can have the attitude of everything I learn is something that can help me be more successful in the future, then absolutely experience plays. In other words, every experience I have to choose. Am I going to see this as a failure or am I going to see it as a success? And if we can get to the point where we see an experience as a success in the sense of something that I learned, then experience absolutely plays into these 4, or as you would say, the 5th question. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we are an entrepreneur, we are sometimes stubborn. Mm-hmm. We say that we are in face of a deep sea, because we still want to go because we think that the market can turn any time. Does that goes in one of your 4 questions?
Yeah, it does. So what I would say is, if you're playing where other people are not, and you're playing to your strengths, and it's hard but not like getting you sick, then you have to persevere. You just have to keep going. And I think that, to your point, is too often people don't know how to persevere. So, and to just keep moving forward. And so stubbornness plays a role, but I think more often than not, stubbornness hurts us because we know it's time to do something new, and we stubbornly dig in our heels and we don't try something new. That's why, by the way, I think sometimes people get fired from jobs.
Why?
Because they know it's time to do something new, but it's too scary to jump
it's the human
to the
factor.
new thing. Yep. And so the universe gives us this cosmic nudge, and we are forced to try something new.
Sometimes maybe it happened in the US, America. Here it's happened in Mauritius, but farm entrepreneurs do things that they need to do. We told it's like someone who likes to make pickles, who goes into the pickles.
Yeah.
So we call it a craftsmanship entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Is this the right way to do things? Maybe that lady is a very good wedding sewer.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah, I mean, I think, excuse me, this goes back to what your strengths are. If you make pickles and you love to make pickles and you make them extraordinarily well, why wouldn't you turn that into a business? Or is that not what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would do that. Now, you have to ask yourself, can you scale it? But that's a different question. So if you love to do pickles and you do that, then you have to decide, do I want a small business, sort of craftsman business? Do I want to scale this business? Those are two different questions. But if it's something that you love to do and you can make a living doing it, then that's what you should be doing.
And someday that becomes maybe your plan. You wanted or she wanted to have a big enterprise. Is not the way, but sometimes it's the good news.
Right.
The small one, your small company is going to grow up, and then you have to decide either you are an entrepreneur or you are on in the kitchen to do the pickles. So,
yeah.
So where's the disruptive there when instead of being the
okay, I hear the question. So you're picking up on a nuance which I think is important. Not every business that you or I start is going to be a disruptive business, but you and I as individuals can always be willing to disrupt ourselves. So for example, the pickle business. That may not be a disruptive business if you decide to create a restaurant and do something, inside of your town. But if you've had a successful career, for example, as a photographer, and you decide to leave that career as a photographer and start a new business because you feel like my calling is really pickles, it's not photography, then you've disrupted yourself. And what you want to do with that business is, even though it may not be a disruptive business, you still want to play where other people are not playing. You want to set up your pickle shop in a place of town where there aren't 5 other pickle shops. You want to make sure that that's something you do uniquely well, that you're enjoying it every day, and that your sales are going up over time. And so you can still apply those principles of being successful as a business, as an entrepreneur, without the business itself necessarily, upending the universe.
Yes, but at some time you become a businesswoman. When you're selling 10 pickles per day, it's something. When you're selling 20,000, let's say 20,000, not a day, but per week, you have to control all these other stocks, inventory.
Right.
It's one thing you must know financial, but there's a disruption. I'm sorry, Whitney Johnson, there's a disruption in your life. You're not selling, you're no more in the kitchen, you're no more with your client, you're at home, you have in front of you, I don't know, it's a laptop or a personal computer, you have figures.
Yeah.
You're no more selling pickles at the end when your company is growing up at a certain point. But
you
understand what I mean?
I do. Your role has completely changed. So you've gone from being a maker or a craftsman to running a very large company, which is a very, very different role. And so, to answer your question, within the life cycle or of a business, over time, you're continually jumping to new learning curves. And I guess one of the things you have to figure out is, as this becomes a very large business, one that needs to and has begun to scale, is that the person you want to be? Do you want to be the CEO running a billion-dollar company, or do you prefer to be a maker? And that has you, as a disruptor, have basically moved to the top of the market, and now you have to decide, do I want to continue to do this? Can I find joy and happiness in this? Or do I want to disrupt myself again, sell this billion-dollar company to Heinz, play golf, and try something new?
You think someone who is at the head of $1 million rupees company is going to jump?
Yes, they do. Absolutely. But
what are the motives? The motives about that
well,
they jump?
It's a great question, and almost always it has nothing to do with money.
Why?
Because money really doesn't buy happiness. Money buys the ability to be safe and secure. But whenever people get to the top of a learning curve, almost always they jump because they find that they're either bored or they feel like there's more to life than this. They want to try something new. They want to spend more time with their family. It's any one of those things. And so almost always people do not jump to do something new for more money. They jump to do something new for emotional reasons, whether it's family, more time, more challenge, whatever it is.
Why do they want to have? When you have everything, you're a CEO, you're everywhere, you're everywhere, you're doing thousands of jobs, you have all sorts of decisions. Why do you want to go into emotional? Why
because I think you realize, and I think we all realize, I mean, if you look at the research, there's a point, if you think about kind of a bell curve, there's a point at which you don't have enough money to survive, and then you've got sort of poverty and you can't function. But there's also a point where you can be too rich and you can't function either. And so I think what people realize when they get to a top of a curve many times is they have enough. And that once they have that, what really matters to them is their relationship with their husband or their wife or their children. And they want to spend more time with people that they love or doing something that will ease the pain and the suffering in the world. And so I think that, and then they begin to see money not as something that will validate who we are, but as something that can do good for other people. And so it's people shift, and I think oftentimes they shift when they turn 40 or 50.
I was coming to that point. Why 40? Because the kids have 16, they are on the way on their road.
Yeah, it can be related to kids, but I think that there's something more fundamental than that. There was a social psychologist by the name of Erik Erikson, and he looked at the 7 different stages of life. And one of the stages that people hit when they turn 40 years old, so there's a psychological thing happening, is there's this reevaluation of priorities, of what am I really going to do with my life? And so those things that were so important in your 20s and 30s of earning money and sort of proving that money meant you're valuable, you sort of say, no, there's more than this. And so that's why so many people have a midlife crisis. The question is, what do you do with that crisis? Some people do really stupid things like have an affair, go buy a sports car they can't afford, do foolish things. But many people see this as an opportunity to really figure out, okay, how am I really going to contribute? And so that 40 is an important mark for most people. And I would guarantee you, if you were to start to interview people, you would find when they said, well, I needed to do something different, I always say to them, did you just turn 40? And they're like, yeah, I did.
Okay, when you were 40, that was the turning point. I'm going to put the 40 question to
Completely you. Fair. So I, let's see, when I was 38, 39, I left Wall Street.
That's why is it maybe personally, why everyone when it comes, I'm talking about myself.
Yeah.
When you're 38 to 39, when you see that 40 years old kid coming in 2 years time, why are you suddenly want to break things? Maybe your professor Harvard say the one theory to you? When you decide at 39, say, okay, Wall Street.
No, I think, no, so this is just reading and studying that I had done and written about in my first book called Dare, Dream, Do, which is just that this need to really go after and chase your dreams. And like I said, it's very typical. What's interesting though too, just to tack onto that is, as a consequence, knowing this, a few years ago, a colleague of mine, Christina Valletta, she and I started a list called 40 Women Over 40 to Watch, because we felt like a lot of people were reinventing over the age of 40, figuring out what they wanted to do. Women in particular come into their own later, and we wanted to acknowledge people who at that stage of life were reinventing and disrupting themselves and trying to contribute in more meaningful ways.
Some celebrities in that for 40 over 40?
There are a few people, but probably people you don't know who they are, like Anne-Marie Slaughter, Sally Krawcheck. We specifically made it so that people either nominate themselves or they are nominated and need to be on that list or want to be on that list, because once you're nominated, you're always on that list. And what we're trying to do is create a community of women who are really trying to make a difference. And we felt like if we just got name brand people, they wouldn't care, they wouldn't contribute. And many of us look at it and we say, you know what? I will never be Sheryl Sandberg. I admire her. I think she's amazing, but I can't really have her be my role model because it's just too unattainable. But if I can show you someone like me, for example, then someone who's in their 30s goes, okay, you know, I can probably do that.
Last question before I'm going to ask you a question about what you're going to tell in Mauritius too. So whenever an employer sees that you have some staff for 40 years, there should be some tilting, so must I start to see for new talents because the 40 clock is going to ring. Maybe my secretary, who has been with me for nearly 16 to 20 years, is going to drop the ladder.
It's a great question. It's a great question. What I would say is, I think through the course of someone's career, there are always going to be these trigger points, and turning 40 I think is one of them. Another trigger would be when someone's been in the same role for 4 years, for example. If you're mapping against the 10,000 hour rule, what you'll see in my theory of where I talk about the S curve and is basically once you've been in a role for about 4 years, you start to get bored and your neurons are no longer firing. And so what will happen is that person will either leave the firm, or you can find something for them to do in the firm. You can allow them to disrupt themselves from within the firm so that you can keep their talent and their experience inside the firm.
So a promotion every 4 years?
Not necessarily a promotion. What you will find is that people, sometimes they want to move up, but sometimes they just want to try something new and interesting. So for example, a person who's been in operations for 10 years says, you know what, I really want to try sales. And they say, okay, you can. Now, you're not getting a promotion to do that, and we're not even going to raise your salary. But if you want to try this, then let's have you try it.
So, Whitney Johnson, you're in Mauritius. So, what are you going to tell to these guys in Mauritius in coming hours?
Yes, on Friday. So I'm giving a workshop. It's a facilitated session of about 4 or 5 hours. It's called Disrupt Yourself, Putting the Power of Disruptive Innovation to Work. And during that session, I'm going to talk about what disruptive innovation is, explain what personal disruption is, talk about the S curve that we usually use to gauge how quickly an innovation will be adopted, but I reimagine it so that we can understand the psychology of disruption and what it looks like when we're trying to learn something new. And then I will identify 7 different variables that we can use that help us accelerate along that S curve, like taking the right kinds of risks, playing to your distinctive strengths. And in the course of that workshop, after I've introduced each variable, then I will invite the group to dissect and explore, okay, what are my strengths? How can I take more of the right kind of risk? How do I embrace the constraints that I have in front of me? With the objective of understanding these 7 accelerants, seeing how they can, once you figure out where you are on the S curve, figuring out how these accelerants can help you move up your learning curve more quickly, having the tools to then jump to a new learning curve, because the odds of success are 6 times higher, the revenue opportunity 20 times greater when you pursue a disruptive course. It's for an individual, for their career, but it's also for vice presidents, for CEOs of organizations who are trying to figure out, how do I make my business more innovative? How do I make the people who work for me more engaged and more productive? And the idea being, if I can help them disrupt themselves, they'll be more engaged, they'll be more productive, our return on investment will be higher, because again, companies don't disrupt, people do.
Are you going to shock them? I know that if I
Shock
say
them?
shock them, yeah, shock them, putting the real truth in front of the
I don't know
face.
if people would say that what I talk about is shocking. I would say that there are a lot of aha moments, like, oh.
Oh, yeah, I wanted that oh moment.
Yeah,
Okay.
I never thought of that. Oh, I get it. And oh, this is really helpful because I know that I need to change, but I didn't have a framework for changing. Or, oh, I've changed jobs a lot. Or, oh, after 4 or 5 years, I always want to do something new. Now I know why. Now I know I wasn't out of my mind. It was just the natural cycle of you start at the bottom, you climb to the top, you jump to the bottom again, you climb to the top. And it's just the pattern of growth that we follow.
Why do we follow this pattern? This is in our ADN, DNA, what
I think it is. I think it is. I think there's a human imperative for us to make progress. And we need to continually be learning. And there's something about the resistance that comes, the challenge that comes when we try something new that keeps our brains engaged, that has neurons firing. And so when we constantly have something that's hard but not too hard, that's when we're happiest. And so I think that's why there's that human imperative there.
Are you letting them in their comfort zone, or are you going to push back in the incomfort zone?
What I hope to do, and I believe I can do it, is have people walk away from it and say, I need to try something new. And because of what I say, I hope that I will make it safe for them to do it.
Why safe? Safe is comfort zone. You want them to be out of the comfort zone, but to be in the comfort zone.
I want to make it less scary.
Special space-time.
Yeah, I want to make it like, I want people to say, okay, I'm at the top of my learning curve. I know I need to jump. But if I understand why I need to jump, and if I understand that when I jump, if I'll do market risk, I'm able to help them pack a parachute that makes that jump to a new curve feel less scary. So that they'll move out of their comfort zone, but it won't be as scary to do so.
This is what you did when you were 40?
When I was 40?
You went with your parachute?
Not enough.
Why not enough?
Because
I
hadn't figured all of this out yet. No, I hadn't figured all this out. So I kind of just jumped, and I think that because I just jumped, I probably made some mistakes. Like I didn't save enough money.
Okay, this is it a factor whenever you are going to
absolutely.
To disrupt?
It's a factor.
You have to have a safe.
You do. But here's what I would say to you. So I did not save enough money, and so that was something that I needed to learn. But I will say to you, I had a conversation with a gentleman who had 10 years worth of savings in the bank, and he still wasn't willing to try something new. So I think frequently people say, oh, it's the money. I can't do it because of the money. And I think more often than not more often than we would expect, it's not really about the money. It's about something else.
What is that?
Something else could be, it's about their sense of identity. If I try something new, I'm no longer, for example, when I'm on Wall Street, I'm a #1 ranked analyst. I've got a lot of prestige. I'm able to call up billionaires in Mexico and have them meet with me. When I'm no longer that analyst, I don't have that prestige. I don't have that stature. I have people who won't pick up the phone anymore because I'm not who I was. And so there's this loss of identity. Like I'm not who that person was. And so what does that look like? So sometimes it's the money, but I think a lot of times it's all of the identity comes with it. If I'm not a photographer, if I'm not a Wall Street analyst, if I'm not a journalist, then who am I?
Very good question. It was a pleasure to meet you, Whitney Johnson.
It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Everyone is going to learn something from you, because in 30 minutes I've learned very much. Thank you very much.